Hello everyone and welcome to our School on Wheels online workshop. For the next hour we'll be learning about building connections with group foster home and runaway teens. My name is Natasha Vayas and I'm the Education and Training Coordinator for School on Wheels. I'm excited to have with me this evening our host Hannah Duff. Hannah is earning her Master's in Education and Teaching credential from UCLA's Graduate School of Education. Hannah has tutored and mentored dozens of high school students through our program, and she's now serving as an intern at the School on Wheels South LA Learning Center. Hannah will provide some strategies on building trusting relationships with teen students. And the last part of the hour will be dedicated to answering your questions. For the purpose of sound quality, all participants are muted. You have joined the workshop listening through your computer's speaker system by default. If you have a pair of headphones handy, I suggest using them to hear the audio more clearly. You can ask questions using the question pane shown here. I'll show you.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, that's all right. So when you have a question ready, just simply type in your question and hit send. And we'll be reading questions aloud for this workshop so that everybody can hear them clearly. If we don't get to your question, feel free to email it to myself or your regional coordinator after the workshop. And Hannah's also going to give her information. So at this time, I'm excited to turn it over to our host, Hannah Duff. Thanks, Hannah, for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm really happy to be here and talk about this important topic with all of you. Like Natasha said, I began volunteering with School on Wheels at Kids to Kids Group Home in Region 8 about 2 years ago. And I'm now at UCLA earning my Master's in Education, and I work with children at the School on Wheels Learning Center in South LA. So tonight we're going to be covering a couple different topics. The first one is strategies for the initial meeting. We're going to talk about the challenges in forming relationships with our students and also how to deal with disappointments. And then finally, we're going to talk about advocating for teen students. I feel that these topics are the most important. We could have covered many topics because there is such a need to share strategies and success stories and challenges. But I'm going to try to go through my presentation and leave time at the end for discussion and questions. So here we go. I broke down some of the challenges that we face into 3 major topics. The first one is safety. How can I make my student feel safe with me? Most of our students have had very negative experiences with adults, and on top of that, the chaos of living in a group home or a transitional shelter can be very difficult to sort of navigate your way through. So we're going to talk about how to make our students feel safe with us. Next, we're going to talk about connecting. How do I show my student that I care? Also, how do I connect with a teenager? And how do I deal with disappointments? And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about advocating. How do I help my student reach out for support? And how do I help my student reach out for resources when they have kind of the natural resistance to authority figures? So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Safety. These are basic School on Wheels policies that can go a long way. So first of all, it's really important to be familiar with the rules and regulations of the group home or transitional shelter and follow them at all times. So every shelter or group home has different rules, and just having a chat with your regional coordinator or talking with the shelter staff can really help clarify these things for you. Also, again, really simple, wearing your School on Wheels badge to identify yourself. This helps protect you and also lets everyone know who you are and why you're there. Next, always check in with facility staff as soon as you arrive. The group homes and shelters can be really chaotic. Like I said, there can be girls and boys running around everywhere. So it's important that you just check in and say hello. And finally, another common sense policy never enter a student's bedroom. And this is sort of a no-brainer, but it can be really tempting to go into a bedroom because it's quiet. But just to protect yourself and to respect your student space, it's important to stay away from the bedroom. My personal tips for safety, these are some tips that I just put together to help my students feel comfortable around me and to help the staff feel comfortable around me, because they will be your allies for the time that you're there tutoring. First of all, take time to say hello to everyone who is around. This makes everyone in the space feel comfortable with you, including the staff, other students that you don't really work with or may not know very well, therapists that might be there visiting, social workers. Just making everyone feel comfortable and safe around you is really important. Also, pay close attention to your body language and your tone of voice. I've found that if you enter calmly and quietly, the residents and staff will respond to you in the same way. And again, it's just making everyone feel comfortable with you and safe with you. If possible, find a quiet workspace and try to work with the environment, but never enter a student's bedroom or go off-site without permission. I've asked the staff to enforce the mandatory homework hour so we can work in a quiet environment. I've asked the staff if I can sit in their office with the student while they're working on their computers, just to have some quiet space. Also, keep your physical distance. This includes touching students' belongings or sitting too close. And again, that's just making your student feel safe with you. Make sure your student understands why you are there. That's one of the most important things that you can do, is just remind your student that you're there as a volunteer. You're there to help them, not to get him or her in trouble. Like I said, most of the kids we'll work with have had negative experiences with adults, so it's really, really important that they understand that we're there to help, not to tell the staff that they did something that they're not supposed to do. Also, be consistent. Work extra hard to come every week at the same time so your student knows that you are reliable and predictable. This is so important. Just be consistent. And finally, but most importantly, give it time. It takes weeks for your student to feel comfortable around you and let you in. Let your student accept you on your own terms. If you come in with this attitude that you're there to help and meet their academic needs, they will know that. They'll respond to that. Our next challenge is connecting, showing your student that you care. And here are some of my tips for connecting. First of all, really simple, spend time with your student every week. Just by showing up, you show your student that you value their time and that you care enough to be there. Listen. When teenagers talk, listen. That shows that you care about their thoughts and opinions. And I found that not many teenagers are listened to, not at school, not in the home or transitional shelter that they're living in. So having someone come every week to just listen to their thoughts can really help them connect with you. Next, ask questions, but keep it light. Just show a natural, genuine interest. Try not to dig into their past, even though you may be curious about how they ended up there. Just keep it light. Ask, how was your weekend? Do you have any plans? Questions like that just shows a natural interest in their lives. Next, manage your own expectations. It can take weeks for a student to open up to you, especially if they have a negative view of their academic selves. You're not there to save them or necessarily get them into college, even though that may be something that you would like to see them do. but manage your own expectations and take it 1 week at a time. How do I connect with the teenager? This can be extremely challenging. This is a picture that was taken of myself and some of the group home kids. We went to a trip to UCSB. We took a tour of the campus and had lunch in the dining hall, and that was something that I put together with my regional coordinator because the girls talked about going there, and I kind of took the next step to make it possible for them to get there. So my first tip is really simple. Just be yourself. If you are sincere, your student will be able to tell. They're really smart kids. They can tell when someone is just there trying to play a part. They really respect people who are honest to them and to themselves. If you're comfortable with yourself, your student will be comfortable with you. Next, be creative. By active listening, you'll be able to pick up on what your student enjoys. And I tend to hold on to that information and find creative ways to bond over that. So I've had students tell me that they love Twilight, or I'll notice a Twilight poster in their common area, and then the next week I'll plan a Twilight movie night with popcorn, or maybe we'll read the book over summer as sort of a book club thing. So holding on to those ideas and just taking them to the next level really shows your student that you care about them. And as always, be patient. Let your student take you in on his or her own terms. I can't stress that enough. And it may take weeks, but it will eventually happen. You will eventually connect with your students. I put together a list of activities. These can be anytime activities, reward activities, or summer activities. And on our School on Wheels website, there's going to be a PDF available if you want to download it. We won't go through this list now, but in the PDF, I give a little bit of information on how to plan these activities and also how to get funds for them. Most of them are free, but I have some resources that I've found that are really inexpensive. So we'll just skip over this slide. And finally, dealing with disappointments. This can be a really difficult part of being a group home tutor, or if you work with runaway teens. It's sort of the transitory nature of the kids that we work with. It can be really disappointing when you show up and your student has gone AWOL, or your student has been arrested or violated their probation and is packing up their room. I don't think it's ever easy to deal with these kind of disappointments, but here are some of my coping mechanisms, I guess you could say. First of all, don't blame yourself. If your student gets arrested or goes AWOL, don't take it personally. I say it all the time, but our students are mature people who make their own decisions for their own reasons. And it has nothing to do with you. It's not sending a message to you about your tutoring. It's their own decision that they make for themselves. Also, allow yourself to feel sad, because feeling a sense of loss or sadness is also a sign that you cared about that student. But after you allow yourself to be sad for a short time, there are other students at the group home or shelter who need you too. So even though you may feel sad that one particular student has gone AWOL or gotten arrested, don't forget all the other kids who need you. Next, reach out. Reach out to other group home or transitional shelter tutors, because no one understands your position quite like they do. I've found that my regional coordinator was also a good person to reach out to. So give them a call if you feel like just talking about your student or figuring out what to do next, what steps to take. One of the things that I've learned over time is that we serve some of the most loyal kids you'll ever meet. They know if you truly care about them, and that means that they'll find their way back to you eventually. I've had students email me or get in touch with the group home staff to try to get my phone number so they can track me down and just to check in. So if you really cared about your student, you will most likely see them again because they know. Advocating. Advocating can be a pretty big challenge because there are so many adults in our students' lives and so many titles that you'll hear just by being in the group home or a runaway shelter environment. It's a whole complicated system that you will come to know if you spend enough time there, hence my little picture about the foster care system and aging out and all those terms that you'll get to know if you're there long enough. Some of the most important people are the social worker and the parole officer. Those are the two names that you'll hear about most often. Another person is the COSTA, it's the court-appointed special advocate, and this is the person who most likely has the educational rights to your student if you're working with the foster student. There are also different kinds of therapists, and you'll see occupational therapists come to the house. You'll see therapists come to do drug and alcohol groups. So therapists are people that your student may or may not trust, but it's good to just know who they are and what they do. Teachers are really crucial adults in the lives of our student, and we'll talk more about how to reach out to them. And trustworthy family members, not all of them trust everyone in their family. If they do trust certain family members, you might see them pop in and out. They might go visit their family over the weekend. Facility directors and staff, of course, and other adult members. I've had students work with other organizations like Big Brothers and Sisters and have mentors in their lives. So these are just some of the adults and people with titles in our students' lives. So first of all, before we help our students access these people as resources, we need to learn how to reach out to them. So my first tip is to establish a good relationship with the facility directors and staff. If you communicate with them often and have a good relationship with them, they'll listen to you when you speak on behalf of your student if you need something for your student. If you want your student to have extra quiet time to do their homework. So if you have requests, they'll most likely listen to you if you have that relationship early on. Keep your School on Wheels regional coordinator updated. They're always there to help, and also they have connections with the local school districts and usually the special populations liaisons. And the districts and the special populations coordinator, those are good people to have on hand if you want to go meet with the teacher or go with your student to talk with their guidance counselor. Because again, the education rights can be a little bit tricky to navigate if that's something that you want to do. Contact your student's social worker or case manager. Facility directors will give you their contact information, and social workers have an obligation to help their clients make positive connections with adults. And this is really important and something that I found I found this out over time, but they're mandated to make those positive connections and also to keep your contact information in your student's file so it can kind of follow them around wherever they may be. Also, get permission to go with your student to meet with teachers. This can be really challenging. Be persistent because you will get resistance from school staff, especially counselors, because you need special permission from the person who has education rights for your student. If your student is in foster care, this person will most likely be the court-appointed special advocate, or CASA. I've had to wait months to be able to go meet with one of my students' honors English teachers, and eventually I just started communicating through email with the teacher because I couldn't go meet in person. But if you can meet in person, it's really important to make those connections with teachers. Next, bring in resources for your student. So you could bring in college brochures, scholarship information, California Youth Connection information, it's CYC, it's a leadership program for youth, whatever it might be. Sometimes I would just bring in bus program information for my students and just leave it around. And usually somebody would pick it up and get interested in it. But bringing resources to your student can be really powerful. So just a couple closing remarks. No matter where you are in your relationship with your student, if you're just starting out, if you're struggling, it's so important that this relationship continues. Being persistent and also being consistent, showing up and being there every week really shows your student that you care about them. And I understand as much as anyone that the work that we do can be really rewarding and also really hurtful sometimes, but that's why we have workshops like this where we can talk about some of the challenges that we face and support one another. So now I'd like to have an open discussion. I'd like to know if there are any situations that you'd like feedback on, if there are other topics that I haven't covered, and other questions that you have for me or other tutors in the webinar.
So Hannah, we did have one submitted beforehand from one of our soon-to-be tutors, and she said she's 23, and you know, she's probably closer to her students' age than is typical of many of our volunteers. Do teens tend to respond differently to younger tutors? She worries about being seen as a peer or someone lacking life experience or not worth listening to. What do you think about that?
Well, my fellow tutor, I am 23 also. So that probably answers a little bit of your question. When I first started tutoring at the group home, I believe I was 21. And I felt like being a young tutor who had gone to college and was pursuing further education and working and volunteering, I felt like bringing that positivity into the group home was really advantageous. I also saw, on the flip side, me being 21, sometimes they would try to bring volunteers, not necessarily from School on Wheels, but sometimes therapists who were much older, and the girls did not respond to them at all. So I think it really depends on your students, but for me, being younger was a huge advantage, just in terms of connecting with them and showing them that they can go to college and work towards a career.
Another question we had was, what do you do when students disclose very personal information and it's, you know, you're not sure how to react to something that's a little maybe disturbing? What do you do in that kind of situation?
That's a really good question, because you may go into the School on Wheels volunteer program thinking that you're just going to be doing math problems or reading together, but when you're in a group home, it's a whole different atmosphere. It's a whole different environment, and your students will share personal and sometimes disturbing information with you. I've found that it's much easier to be upfront with students in the beginning and let them know that there are certain things that you have to report before getting into a situation where you kind of have to go behind their back. I've dealt with a lot of drug stuff that was happening in the group home, and there were situations where I had to talk to my regional coordinator and talk to the group home director, but I wished that I would have been completely honest from the beginning about reporting and what things I absolutely had to report and what things I could keep to myself.
So I know you touched upon it a little bit, but maybe we could revisit. How do you deal with students who just have completely checked out of school and, you know, have given up on graduating, have given up on any education, and they're not interested in doing anything academic in the session?
This was something that I struggled with quite a bit. As a tutor, I had about 6 students at one time, 6 girls, and there were times when I didn't have a choice but to allow my students, or some of my students, to fail or make mistakes in order to learn from them. I think, like I said, our students are mature people who make their own decisions about life, about school, about everything. And in many ways, they are adults, and they're looking out for themselves the best way they know how. I also feel that most of our students are in survival mode, and it's really difficult for them to think about the future. So when I'm working with a student who is particularly unmotivated and won't do homework, doesn't care about school, I ask them what they see themselves doing in the future. What do you want to be? Not necessarily where do you want to go to college, but what do you want to be? And then sometimes having those long-term goals in mind help you break it down. Well, in order to be a biologist, we need to do math homework because of this, and that reason. So having long-term goals in mind, but also realizing that they are in survival mode and just dealing with the day-to-day. I think it can be really challenging, and that's something that you're going to have to decide every day. It's if you need to take a day to just sit and talk and be together, or if you're going to attempt to do homework. And it's okay if you do take a couple days just to talk and sit together.
Do you think it's hard to come in without expectations?
Yeah, I think a lot of times our tutors come in with the best intentions. We want the very best life possible for our students, and that usually includes succeeding in school and going to college. But I think it's really important to go in to every session with the mindset that you're going to meet your students' needs in that moment. you're going to make the decision to either go ahead and do homework, or you may just need to watch Prison Break or something for half an hour before you start working. So I don't want to say have low expectations or no expectations, but I guess having open expectations for meeting your student where they are in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We had another question that was related to just kind of maybe the first few sessions and the introductions. You know, sometimes it's very awkward. You don't know the student; they don't know you. How do you address that when you meet them in the first little while? Do you talk about that you know, explain your role, and how do you get over that awkwardness of starting out that tutoring relationship?
Well, there's a couple different activities that School on Wheels provides you with. So you can go in to that first session with a survey to work on together or something to do. I think I bring up some activities that you could do, getting to know you activities in the PDF that you can find on the School on Wheels website. But in terms of the awkwardness of that first meeting, it's going to be awkward. And your student will feel some resistance towards you, no matter who you are or what your intentions are. So it's really important to establish with your student that you are a volunteer. You're there because you want to be. You're there to provide them with the academic assistance that they need, and that you're just there to help. And I've found that coming in quiet and calm and just being receptive to what they have to tell me has always worked, instead of just coming in and saying, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to save the world, I'm going to save you, coming in with that attitude. So it has a lot to do with your attitude personally, and also just how you establish your role as a tutor.
When do you think is a time where you kind of, or what would be the turning point as far as giving up, like, you know, on not giving up on a student, but giving up on the tutoring part, and see if they don't want help, but maybe, you know, they're around, do you keep trying to reach out to them? Do you try to help another student? What kind of input do you have on that?
When I was tutoring at the group home, I was doing group tutoring by myself. So it was me and 6 other girls. And I kind of came with a bag of tricks. I had, sometimes I would bring a board game, sometimes I would bring flashcards or craft supplies or something, just to kind of have with me if we ever did get into those situations where it just was not working. And you'll be able to gauge what's going on at the group home, how their day has been, after spending a couple minutes there talking with the staff, checking in with sort of your regular students. And there will be really hard days where you can't get any work done. It's just mentally and physically impossible to get work done. So that's why I think it's important to think a couple steps ahead and maybe come prepared with those things, and also just ask them what they want to do. Sometimes, especially before summer, I would ask, what are some things that you'd like to do? Like, if we're just hanging out, what are some things I can bring in for you to do? And just kind of make a list and just say, hey, let's do something on our list, and just look at it together and pick something to do.
I know you've just worked with girls' homes, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you have any opinion though on whether it's easier to work with girls or boys?
Well, like you said, since I've never worked with boys, um, it's hard for me to always heard that saying that kids are kids, no matter who they are or what they've been through, and I believe in that to an extent. That I could do the same activities with my group home kids that I could do with kids who are living in a private school or going to a private school in Malibu or some things. So I think maybe the same could be said in terms of boys and girls, that if you put thought and care and into your tutoring sessions, that boys will respond to that as much as girls would.
We had a question just about the structure of the session, and we usually tell our tutors to spend maybe the last 15 minutes doing something fun, having that as a reward for their patience in tutoring. Do you recommend that, or do you recommend maybe just playing it by ear with these students and seeing how the session's going?
I think when I began tutoring, I had sort of a structured session in my mind. I would prepare my sessions and have things that I wanted to cover and wanted to bring up with them, but I quickly learned that that never happened. And really, every day is different. I've come in and it was such a warm, loving environment. The occupational therapist was there, and they were all cooking dinner, and we all sat down and had dinner together. And then I've come the following week, and the staff and myself had to lock ourselves in the office because there was a fight going on. So those are the realities of working with the kids that we do. Sometimes I mean, their lives are unpredictable, and sometimes their actions are unpredictable as well. So it's really important just to take your students in where they're at that day, in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You can go ahead and submit more questions, and Hannah will address them. I was just thinking about one that I used to face when I would place tutors in group homes. And sometimes it's really difficult to get the staff to be aware of tutors coming in, and there is a high turnover of staff at these locations. Did you have any experience with that? And is that something that you recommend? Or stories?
Yes, Natasha. Some staff are better than others in different ways. And there were times where I really just had to see myself as the advocate for my student and just make a decision that I am going to talk to the student's teacher no matter what, and nobody is going to stop me. Because the group home staff was not returning my calls and just content to watch my student fail when I wasn't and she wasn't. So there definitely have been times where I've had to take matters into my own hands because the group home staff either didn't really care that much or was kind of burnt out or had given up on the girls when I wasn't ready to. So I think do what you can to be respectful and follow the rules and just be understanding of their position, but also keep in mind that you may be the only advocate that your student has. And sometimes you need to be a little persistent, or in my case, really persistent.
Thanks. We had a really specific question, which I like. It's this one tutor is going to tutor at a boys' home, and she's just wondering what kind of dress would be appropriate if you just, really make sure to cover from head to toe. What do you think about that? I know you've been at girls' homes, but
I think I might think about what I would wear to a day at work. I've been working at the School on Wheels South LA Learning Center, and I tend to wear something that's comfortable and also that I feel comfortable in if I am talking to parents or if we have a site visit that day. So something that you feel comfortable in, and that you wouldn't mind talking to other adults in. So keep it covered. That's my advice.
yeah, and this tutor she's asking because it's like a Pearl court order because we do work with those group homes, and I don't think there's usually any specific policies, but we could always check with the group homes and see. But I would always be concerned. You don't have to, like you say, you don't have to dress as like you're going to an interview. But if you dress in kind of a conservative way, I think it covers you. And I mean, you could still make a connection with the teens and talk about your interests and stuff. You just don't have to come in like the ripped T-shirt and jeans and all that just to to make that connection in clothing, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
And I always felt more comfortable if I was sort of dressed down a little bit, like jeans and a T-shirt, when I was around my girls, just to kind of, I mean, that's what they're wearing, jeans and T-shirts, so I guess whatever the environment calls for.
Do you know the names of the advocacy groups that the foster children could join to have a voice?
One of the big ones that I know of is California Youth Connection, CYC. I know that that is, I believe. I also have a couple good websites where you can go to get more information about advocacy groups or leadership groups that your student can join. There's actually on our website, I think we do have some information, the School on Wheels website. myfriendsplace.org. The California Runaway. Those are all good places to get information, and I have these websites on a handout.
Sorry, I think we had a technical dropout there, but looks like we're back. Does anyone have any more questions? We're still here for a little bit. We want to make sure that anything specific has been answered. And you know, Hannah can put up her contact information. Any questions that pop up later, you can go ahead and email Hannah or give her a call, and she's also in our South LA Learning Center some of the afternoons. So if you wanted to stop by and talk to her, yeah, she's a great resource.
I know there aren't very many of us who work with group home kids or teenagers in general. So like I said earlier, it's really important that we support each other with strategies or things that have worked for us in the past. So please use my contact information if you ever need some ideas or some encouragement.
Yeah, and a lot of the homes are very specific. I was getting a question here, and the tutor, the urgencies you have, and a lot of the times they might take you to meet the group home staff, which is really helpful. And you can ask that specifically. You know, we can try to arrange that so that they can go over the situations of the youth staying there, and you know more about this, you know, what happens there, and like you said, knowing the schedule, knowing the staff, and just being more familiar with the place before you go in. And that's fine, you know, whatever we can do to make you feel more comfortable. But just be flexible, and you'll learn a lot as you go. And the more time you can spend in one place, I think the better job you can do. You might not be working with the same student over and over, but you will, if you can spend time and work with different students in one place, that will be helpful, because then you'll get to know the place, the staff, and just what goes on.
And then even when new students do come in, they'll see that the older students who have been there a while already know who you are and feel comfortable with you, so that can really help with connecting with those new students. They'll want to be a part.
I think we're going to wrap it up tonight. Thanks for coming and attending. We really appreciate it for being here to answer questions and give us this information. It's really helpful. And like I said, you can keep submitting questions to your coordinators or to Hannah directly, and we will get to those. So if you can, join us for our next workshop. We have one coming up on November 13th, on Tuesday, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it's actually taking the struggle out of teaching basic math, which will help you with some math fundamentals, and that's and feel free to follow up with any questions. Have a good evening.